personally, I mean, I think you're going to agree with me. I think they're must-haves, especially at this price point. Like it was harder to recommend them when they were in the box set, but I think that these three mixes and Topographic, which I think will eventually get a standalone release, are among Steven's best Atmos work. Greetings, Ian here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today, my esteemed colleague Jonathan Cornell from ImmersiveAudioAlbum.com is here, and we're going to talk about these three newly reissued Yes titles. The Yes album from 1971, Fragile also from 1971, and Close to the Edge from 1972. Now, these have been available previously in very expensive super deluxe box set editions, and I've covered the latter two here, plus Jonathan and I, along with our friends Mike and Ryan, reviewed Tales from Topographic Oceans. But I thought that since Rhino is putting these out as standalone discs for the first time, and my comments on those videos have largely been people who are unhappy that they're box locked, or in other words, you know, kind of reserved to these expensive $100 box sets. But now you can grab each of them for under $100, and I will be leaving links to purchase these from my Amazon affiliate links. So if you'd like to support the channel in a very small but meaningful way, you can use those links and check these out. As Jonathan and I were discussing before the video began, there's actually quite a lot of Yes and surround sound.
So you go back to the early 2000s, like the launch of the DVD-A and SACD, like that period. They did Fragile and Magnification, and those were both mixed by Tim Wiedner. And the original 5.1 mix of Fragile was, I would say, mostly like pretty poorly received. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's quite different from the original mix. There's a couple songs that use like alternate parts. There's a lot of like extra reverb on top of it, which is odd because Fragile is generally a very dry sounding record when you listen to it. So to me, that's one of those early 5.1 mixes that wasn't very successful. And it was also included in the 2015 edition of Fragile when Steven Wilson remixed it in stereo and 5.1. They also included the old 5.1 mix, which was cool. They could have thrown it in the new box set version too, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you go to the early 2010s, we got the original Steven Wilson series of the 5 albums that were remixed, which were, the first one they did was Close to the Edge back in 2013. And I think it was a surprise at the time because it was said for years that some multi-tracks from Close to the Edge were missing, but I guess they found them all around that time. The same thing was said about In the Court of the Crimson King for years, that they couldn't find all the tapes for it, but eventually they did. So Close to the Edge was the first one that was done, and you and I were saying it was kind of interesting how they were doing them out of order.
Yeah.
So I think after that, they did the Yes album was the second one, and then Relayer and Topographic. And Topographic for sure was the last one that they did as part of the original series. And then after that, I think it was said that the tapes for any of the remaining 70s ones were not available. Like I know a lot of people wanted Going for the One and Drama. I know Steven has said he wanted to do them, but as of now, the tapes are said to be unavailable. But what was interesting about the original series, or what they called them the definitive editions at the time, little did we know that there would be
another definitive edition.
Little did we know. I mean, nobody knew there would be Atmos music when those were done. Yeah. But they were licensed by Warner out to Panegyric or Panegyric, I forget how you pronounce it, which is Declan Colgan's label that did like the XTC and King Crimson reissues. Yeah. So they weren't like Warner products. They were licensed out to this other label. And now these new ones that have come out with Atmos, the box sets, and now these new Blu-rays have been directly from Warner and Rhino. So I think it's kind of interesting, like, well, in the 2010s, like Rhino didn't think it was worthwhile to release surround versions of these as, you know, like in-house exclusives, but it shows you how things have changed, how surround music has become more popular in the last decade. And it made me wonder if maybe like asking to find missing tapes was too big an ask when you were licensing these out to another label. But now that Rhino is doing these internally, like they could be persuaded to look a little harder for things that are missing. But I don't know. I think it's an open question as to whether the Atmos series will continue after Relayer. I mean, we're just assuming Relayer will be released in Atmos. I think it's like a 99% possibility that we'll see that, within the next year.
It's also worth mentioning that Fly From Here got an Atmos mix from Richard Whittaker that you're a fan of. I've heard it just a little bit. And the new record, Aurora, and I think the one right before that may have also gotten an Atmos mix.
To go back to what you were saying originally, I think just about every review I've read of the box sets, including the ones I wrote myself for IA, everybody was sort of like, it was like a caveat, like these new mixes are great, but like it stinks that they're stuck in a box set.
Right.
I can't recall reading a review where people were like, it's so great that these are now in a box set, because people were used to, the previous editions were these like economical little CD, DVD-A or CD Blu-ray packages.
Yeah.
So I didn't think personally that they would ever issue these outside the boxes, because Rhino had done other releases of Atmos things that were standalones, like whether it was Van Morrison's Moondance or Blues for Allah or various other reissues that we've talked about on this channel. But I think this is a good surprise, because I always used to recommend these to people because there's a lot of Yes fans and their music is very well suited to Atmos. But it's kind of like, well, you have to buy like a $100 box set to hear it. And not all of them are on streaming either. I think the only ones that are on streaming are the Yes album and Topographic.
Oh, that's really strange.
Yeah, Fragile for whatever reason was never uploaded to Apple Music, and I think Close to the Edge was there, but then it disappeared. I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments could mention their experience with this, but I know for sure because I checked before we started the video. The Yes album is definitely still there, and Topographic is still there.
Okay, cool. So I guess in the course of this video, we can sort of speak to people who maybe bought the old Blu-rays from going back to, I think, 2013, 14, 15, that period. And say those folks weren't hardcore enough to buy the box sets. Let's try and encourage them and maybe inform them as to how and why these mixes are better than the old ones, because as you were saying, like, Yes has to be maybe the most controversial and picked apart band that we talked about, and a lot of this comes down to the mixes themselves, because they were mixed originally by Eddie Offord, who was the producer of these albums and very close to the band, and for a lot of people the original mixes were amazing. I mean, I think they certainly are amazing for the time and now. I kind of feel like going from the old mixes, the old 5.1 mixes, to the new Dolby Atmos mixes, that Steven has gotten us back closer to what Eddie Offord did with the band in the early 70s. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think it's important to kind of mention like what the intention was behind remixing these albums, because with a lot of the projects that Steven has done, the goal is really just to make a surround version. Right. And he makes a stereo version first just to kind of match the original, to make it easier, because if you start mixing directly in surround, it's difficult to judge the balance of things, right?
Yeah.
So there are some records he's done where he's been very transparent in saying like the best I could do was match the original and I can't improve on it. And there are some records where they haven't even put out his stereo mix, like Seeds of Love or Rush's A Farewell to Kings. They only released the surround version. I think for the Yes records, for that initial round of reissues, part of whatever the licensing deal was between Warner's and Declan's label was that they couldn't use the original stereos on these reissues. So it necessitated that they had to do a stereo remix.
I see.
Again, I think Steven had done these anyway, just as part of his process of, putting reconstructing the record before mixing it in surround. So I think he would tell you, or maybe he even has said in interviews over the years, that his intention wasn't really to improve these records, at least not the early ones like, the Yes album or Fragile. I think for Relayer and Topographic, people tended to be more critical of how the originals sounded for those. Yeah. I know for sure that I think the remix of Topographic sounds better than the original. Some people may agree, some people may disagree. So to your point, I think particularly the later albums, like from Close to the Edge onward, because the mixes are so dense, like when it all blends together in stereo, it's you kind of get the impression of like, I don't know, sort of like a Jackson Pollock painting. Like you can't really hear all the details, but it sort of blends into this cohesive thing.
Yeah.
And when you start, pulling the parts out in surround, it changes the impression of it. Yeah. And I think some people like that, some people don't. As someone who kind of likes clarity and the idea of hearing more of the individual pieces, I like it personally.
Yeah, well, I grew up on the 2003 remasters of the S catalog, which are very shrill, very compressed. So for me, coming to Steven Wilson's mixes, it was night and day. Even the stereo mixes drew me in. And like, for instance, like Bill Bruford's drums on Close to the Edge, I think are some of the most immaculately recorded toms, snare, toms, kick, whatever, on any recording, especially of this era. So yeah, I guess let's go back to the Yes album, which I have my Blu-ray from the box set here. And I think you said you had the box set on hand. There we go.
Here's.
And as I was kind of saying to you before the video, we started recording, I feel like this is maybe by nature the most conservative of the three Atmos mixes. But it has so much clarity, so much punch, that it kind of gives me the sensation of being in the studio with these guys. Like it feels very much like a band playing in the studio. There aren't quite as many like what I would call studio manipulations or like using the studio as an instrument, kind of in the way that we get with subsequent Yes records, especially moving forward to Topographic. But it just sounds like a very raw, very dry 70s mix to me. Occasionally stuff will kind of float into the back, but I hear much more use of like height channels on this mix in comparison to the next two that we're going to talk about. Particularly, as you mentioned before we started, there's a solo in Yours Is No Disgrace where there's like that hard panning. And you were saying that's hitting the your top speakers for you?
Well, one of the interesting things about comparing the old 5.1 mix with this new Atmos version is I found that particularly in a lot of the mixes that Steven did during this period, like the 2011, 2012, 2013, on a lot of the older records, like when they were mixing in the 70s, they did a lot of like stereo hard panning.
Yeah.
So you listen to like the beginning of Yours Is No Disgrace, like the guitars like all the way on one side, the organs all the way on the other. It's a little weird on headphones, but it sounds cool on speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, another example is in a Perpetual Change. There's that part where like the band collapses into mono and then shifts to one side and the other band comes into the other side. That's a clever like studio thing they did on this record.
Yeah.
So in those instances on the old 5.1 mixes, he basically like centered everything.
Okay.
So he took the beginning of Yours Is No Disgrace as an example. Instead of guitar on the left, organ on the right, it's guitar in the center channel, organ in the rear. So It's kind of like you took the stereo version and turned it sideways. Another example of this is like King Crimson's Red album, where instead of the two guitars, a left and right, it's one in front and one in the back. And I mean, I thought it was fine at the time, but sort of revisiting it now, I like that in the Atmos mixes, he reverted it back to stereo.
Interesting.
So when you listen to the beginning of Yours Is No Disgrace on an Atmos system for 714 for me, the guitar is mostly in the front left height speaker, and then the organ is in the right side speaker. And the interplay between those I find more interesting that way.
Yeah.
And that goes, I think, for all the Yes records. There's a lot more of that hard stereo panning that characterized the originals.
Yeah, but I should reiterate that I'm on a 5.1.2 system, so it's not quite as elaborate as what you're hearing. But I do get the sense that the S album does fill my room. And so I'm happy. I'm happy with what I'm hearing. It just doesn't, I don't think it's quite as adventurous in its use of Atmos as the later two. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the material that was given, I wouldn't call it, it's not simpler. It's very complex and interesting material. But I guess the approach is simpler. The way that it's recorded is simpler. There's maybe less overdubs. I do hear, of course, lots of stuff going on with vocals. It's just not as much as I mentioned, like studio as an instrument.
Yeah,
as maybe
I
some of
mean,
the later titles are.
To me, it's more of a simpler reason, which is that Rick Wakeman's on the other albums.
Well,
And
that helps.
kind of a lot of the stuff that he's doing is what the height speakers are used for on the other records. In this one, I mean, I would say there's a lot of stuff in the heights. You know, in Yours Is No Disgrace, there's Steve Howe's guitar. His like little guitar fills in between the vocals are kind of jumping around the four corners. At the end of Starship Trooper, the dueling guitar solos, one is in the ground and one is in the heights when they trade off. I thought that was really well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That part I mentioned in Perpetual Change with the two bands where one of them is on the bottom and one is on the top. So there's a lot of kind of clever things like that. Backing vocals, sometimes they're in the rear, sometimes they're in the heights. I mean, the only song that doesn't really use the heights a lot because it's only one instrument is the clap.
Right.
Which is basically just kind of like an ambient mix.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit different than the way it was done in the original 5.1, where the 5.1 mix was kind of like the guitar was mixed into all the speakers. So it kind of felt like it was sort of projecting in front of you. Mm-hmm. And on Fragile, Mood for a Day was done kind of the same way. And then in the Atmos mixes, it's kind of more like the guitar is in the front and there's just ambience and all the other speakers. So I don't know if one approach is necessarily better than the other. Like you're just not going to get really any surround out of those songs, but they sound good.
Yeah, they do. And, you know, just to kind of conclude our discussion on the Yes album before we move on to Fragile, I think this is a great album. I think it's a great album to introduce somebody to Yes, simply because, you know, this is Yes before they became Yes. Like they hadn't quite established their identity. Like the fact that Rick Wakeman isn't on it is a big part of that. The fact that it's Steve Howe's first album is a big part of that, even though he does a brilliant job. His tones are brilliant. But this is Yes drawing from so many different musical traditions and kind of synthesizing them together. And in many ways, it's like the ultimate statement of progressive rock, or at least the progressive rock ethos. But moving forward, the next albums are going to get more idiosyncratic, more experimental. I would say a little bit less far-reaching in their musical styles that they pull from, but definitively more Yes. So moving on from the Yes album, we have Fragile, which I think is my favorite Yes record, just if we're balancing both material and the mix. I think it's just one that I respond to. It's got, I would say, 3 or 4 really all-time great Yes tracks. And unlike some of the later Yes tracks, they aren't 25 minutes long. So you have Roundabout, which is a showpiece, but a relatively concise one for their standards at like 8 minutes. And of course, a great radio hit that I'm sure you can still hear on the radio now and then to this day. But then you also have songs like South Side of the Sky, which is epic and offers many opportunities for immersion. I love Heart of the Sunrise with that opening sort of minute and a half of that furious playing where Bill Bruford's kind of, he's both on top of the band, but also holding it together like rhythmically, which is really exciting to listen to. But for me, the centerpiece is Long Distance Runaround in the Fish. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. But you were kind of saying that, you know, a lot of people, when they talk about this record, they talk about the concept, you know, the fragile band, you know, that this being communicated musically by, you know, we have these ensemble pieces, which I mentioned, and then we also have these solo pieces, like Rick Wakeman does some Brahms. You have John Anderson's We Have Heaven, which is, by the way, one of the most outstanding surround moments, in my opinion. And you have Bill Bruford's track, 5% for Nothing. So basically, it's a situation where you have these ensemble pieces, and then you have these solo pieces, and together kind of forming this fragile union together. So you were kind of saying this is a strength to you, whereas some others may say that's a weakness. For you, it's a strength.
I think I'm with you on this. I feel like if you weighed, of the ones we're talking about, you weigh the music against the mix, this would probably be my favorite of the three.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember the first time I heard Roundabout. It was like, what is this? Like, it starts with this it starts with this weird like Spanish guitar thing, and then like once the full band comes in, like the bass is the loudest instrument.
Yeah.
Such an interesting song, and it's catchy. Like, it's one of those things. You know, it's always interesting to me. Like and it happened a lot in the '70s when there were prog songs that would cross over like into the main culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times it was kind of its own thing, but for certain bands, you know, like it happened with Tull too, with Genesis, where, you know, like they were big hits, these songs, and they're weird tracks that have unusual structures. They're long or something. So that's always cool.
It would never happen today. Well, maybe it would, but it wouldn't happen as often.
For sure. But this is one where, like, I thought the 2015 5.1 mix was really good. The Atmos version just kind of keeps the balance of that, but reassigns some of the parts, you know, because there's more speakers. So, like, what I hear when I listen to it is a lot of the 5.1 mix, the kind of layout was like drums, guitars, lead vocal in front. And then a lot of the stuff in the back was like synthesizers, percussion, backing vocals. But then you get into Atmos or into 714, and it's like some of Steve Howe's guitar parts go to the sides, like in those like crazy runs he does in South Side of the Sky or at the beginning of Heart of the Sunrise. A lot of the keyboard stuff is in the heights, like in Roundabout. Like, there's long stretches throughout the record where the heights will just go silent because the album is so dry. Like, there isn't even any, you know, reverb to put up there. Then all of a sudden, like, they'll just explode with like a, you know, synth overdub or some backing vocal part or something.
Yeah.
In Roundabout, you could hear the double tracked vocals. One of them is in the center channel. The other one's in the front heights. That's cool effect. During the like above the drifting clouds part in Roundabout, you can hear the percussion circling the heights. Middle section is South Side of the Sky, when Chris Squire is doing those like sort of wordless vocal things, you know, like the trading off his vocals in the rear heights. There's a lot of moments where usually it's either backing vocals or keyboards that are often placed above the listener. So I wouldn't say there's like some radical improvement in the way things are balanced or how they sound from the 2015 version. It's just more creatively spread out because there's more speakers. That's kind of my impression of this mix.
And because this album is more of a studio creation, it's kind of like a band creation meeting a studio creation. There are a lot more opportunities for sound design. Like you mentioned the kind of flamenco guitar sound at the beginning, but you didn't mention the backwards sound that opens the record. And
it goes from the back to the front.
And of course it does.
As you'd expect. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember what album we were reviewing. I think it was Walk into Light, where I said, you know, there's a line about I'm coming through the back door or whatever. And of course that's behind you. It's like the mix is telling you what it wants. And I think that the opening of Roundabout is a perfect example of that. But to me, the best moment of this album in surround is the transition from Long Distance Runaround into The Fish, because you have like those reverse bass harmonics or whatever that is that happens in that segue. And even on my little tiny system, it sounds like those harmonics are rising to the heavens. And it's always just like breathtaking every time that section comes up on the album. I'm just amazed. And yeah, to me, this is, again, if I were going to recommend just one of these three titles to our viewers, I would recommend this one simply because it does have Roundabout, which, as you put, is one of the catchiest and most approachable and iconic songs in the band's catalog, plus a lot of really other cool stuff too, and some great Atmos-y sound design moments that you can really appreciate on your system. Now, moving forward the following year with Close to the Edge, we have what I think is, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue with me, but I think this is one of the great progressive rock albums. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I mean, you could even make an argument that it is the ultimate progressive rock album. A song like Close to the Edge, it occupies the entire first side of the album, but it feels like a song format with sort of an intro, verse, chorus, verse, bridge, outro. So the replayability factor is high.
I was gonna say, you could think of the different sections as like different songs. Like Total Mass Retained is basically a different song from I Get Up, I Get Down. Like they're all segued together, and it's done in a way where I think it was difficult for them to kind of like, you can't really take a part out of it and make it like a single.
Right.
Like they don't really work out of context. But when you put it all together, I mean, just recently on Bill Bruford's YouTube channel, he put up a recording of just the drums isolated for all of side one. And as someone who even like for me, who knows nothing about, the technicalities of drumming or anything, it's fascinating just to hear the way it was constructed. And a lot of times, like when I hear these records from the 70s, like you listen to something even like Thick as a Brick or a Passion Play, it's like, how did they come up with this?
Yeah.
It's just so creative and so interesting.
Yeah.
But what sets Close to the Edge apart from the other Yes albums that have been done in Atmos so far is this is the only one where Steven basically just remixed it from scratch. Like the original version that was done in 2013, you could tell listening to all the new versions on the box set, whether it's stereo, 5.1 or Atmos, they're all completely different. And I think Close to the Edge is probably one of those early mixes that he did that tends to get the most criticism online.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the first time that I heard the record when I got the DVD. I went back and listened to the original mix later on. Like I kind of hear where people are coming from on some parts of it. It does sound like a little bit disjointed in places. A lot of the backing vocals that are in the rear are too loud, I find, listening to the old mix. In general, like the blend between the three singers, like on the last track, for example, it doesn't quite gel as well in the surround mix, maybe just because of the separation or the balance or something. And I think in both the new 5.1 and the new Atmos, he addressed all of these things and then some. It's probably is this the best mix or topographic? Like, I'm not sure. Maybe they're on equal footing. But I think of the three we're talking about, this is the one that has the most interesting Atmos mix.
Yeah, I would agree. And it also feels the most dialed in somehow, like in terms of the writing, the performance, and the mix. I mean, I know I said that Fragile is my favorite, but this is pretty much perfect in my opinion. Like there's nothing here that I would change. And there are just so many moments throughout this mix that seem to be making full use of my speaker array. And you were talking about Rick Wakeman, how he's often positioned in the heights, and that kind of Prague church moment, and I Get Up, I Get Down, where the organ comes in, and it is loud. Like Steven mixed the organ loud, but it comes down to you again, like the voice of God thing, like down from the heavens. And this is one of those albums that I would recommend to any surround sound listener to want to pick up. And I feels like our topics are starting to layer over each other. But I highly recommend this mix. I think the music is great on it. Again, maybe a little less approachable than Fragile and the Yes album, but certainly rewarding of multiple listens.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's a challenging album. Like it's grown on me over time. Like I would say if you're someone who's watching this video who's never heard any classic Yes and you just want to like try one of these Atmos mixes because people say they sound good, like this isn't the one I would start with.
No.
I think you have to kind of build up to this point, with the prior two records. But as an Atmos experience, I mean, it's hard to beat this. I mean, there's so many cool moments in every song. When it first came out last year, I did a very long written review, which I'll give you the link, where I compared sections of it, not just the old 5.1 mix to the new one, but also the Atmos mix to the old 5.1 mix, and got into a lot of detail about how things are placed and what the differences are. So I'll kind of leave you to that, because if we were to recount all of it, this would be like a 2-hour video of picking apart the Atmos mix of Close to the Edge. But I think it's a lot like kind of what I was saying about Fragile. A lot of the guitars that were in the front are now in the sides. A lot of the keyboards that were in the back are now in the heights. Yeah. Same thing with a lot of the backing vocals. There's a lot more reverb on this record than there is in Fragile. So there are sections like that whole I Get Up, I Get Down part inside one where it kind of feels like you're in the middle of like a cave or something. Like, if anyone's seen the Odyssey, like the scene where they're in the cave with the Cyclops, like that's the kind of environment like I feel like I'm in when I listen to that part of the song.
Although the Odyssey scene is far more terrifying.
Yes. But it's like you're in this like primordial, like I think I said in the review, it's like the whole experience of listening to it in Atmos is like you're literally transported into like one of the places like in a Roger Dean cover.
Yeah,
like you're in like some fantasy worlds, like that's
yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm glad that the Blu-ray puts the image from the gatefold
Yes.
on your TV so that you can just you can actually imagine that you're in that world as you're listening. But just a few other things I want to mention. I think this is the first of the Yes albums where the drums start to kind of float into the back more, like a lot of the lower toms and stuff, and that gets explored to an incredible degree in Topographic Oceans. The other thing I want to mention is that there's that really nice, I don't know if I'd call it a guitar solo, but in And You and I, that's almost sounds like he's doing some like whammy work. I don't know if they had a whammy back in 1972, but it has that gull sound, that wee, you know what I'm talking about? But that just seems to shoot all over, front, back. I don't have sides, but what I was going to mention is that this is one of the few discs that I own that kind of makes it feel like I have sides, because it does seem like stuff is panned so widely that I do have the sensation like stuff is coming from the side and even from above. So yeah, I mean, from a strictly technical standpoint, I do think Close to the Edge is the best mix of the three, and maybe it has the best material as well. Like you said, I just wouldn't recommend it to somebody who's coming to the band for the first time. But if you love Yes, I mean, you need all three, right? There's no denying that. If you're a huge Yes fan, you need all three. But especially if you love this album, I think you're going to be satisfied with this mix. And I'll go ahead and put the standalone Blu-rays back up, because obviously I won't be buying these, because from what I've read, they're just 1-to-1, the old Blu-rays put in a case and resold. But this is great for folks, again, who didn't want to buy the big box sets, and they're very reasonably priced at around, I think I saw them for like $22 on Amazon. And it's as good a time as any to remind folks that if you do purchase these from the link in the description, it will benefit the channel in a small but meaningful way. But yeah, was there anything else we want to talk about these three great mixes before we go?
Yeah, just to briefly interject about Close to the Edge, one other interesting thing about this album is that it was long rumored that a quad mix was done in the 70s. The time frame kind of makes sense. It would be kind of earlier in the days of quad, like 73 was really when Warner Atlantic started. So it would have had to be like a retrofit mix, kind of like Aqualung was, where they went back and remixed it later. It got as far as to the point where there was actually like a catalog number for it in some old record and tape catalogs. So I always wondered, like, when they were doing this box set, like, because Rhino's doing their Quadio thing at the same time, like, would it be the opportunity to finally release the quad mix if it actually exists? And I have to assume that they must have looked for it, when they were compiling this box set. So I would take that as definitive proof that it was probably never done.
Yeah.
But I guess if there was something available in the vaults, that would have been a cool inclusion to hear what it would have sounded like if they mixed it in quad back in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but Yes is one of those bands that seem to lend themselves, I think, to multi-channel.
I mean, one of the things that's so interesting about the quad era is that, like, not a lot of prog stuff was done during that period when it was popular. Like, a lot of the recent Surround reissues have been remixes of classic prog things. And, these and the Jethro Tull series in the early 2010s kind of started that whole trend. But it was interesting when quad was new, they never did any of those records. It's like there was never any Yes. For ELP, they only did a live album. I guess for Tull, it turns out there were a bunch that were done, but only 2 of them were released.
And arguably their least proggy albums of the decade.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe War Child is an outlier, but if you were doing Jethro Tull prog albums, it's thick as a brick and a passion play all the way.
Yeah, I don't know. It's thick, and Thick as a Brick is one of the ones that was not mixed in quad. Like
Right. Yeah.
it never even had a like unreleased one that they didn't put out until the box set. So I don't know. I wonder with the Yes records, like I don't know if Eddie Offord has ever mentioned over the years like the idea if he's ever talked about mixing in quad, because it was something that was the record labels were encouraging when these records were made.
Yeah.
One theory that I have is because of the making of these albums was so complicated, particularly Close to the Edge and Topographic, like just the sheer effort it would take to mix it again in quad. I wonder if they just didn't bother with it. And had they done it, maybe it would have been kind of like Aqualung, where it would have been a weird mix that didn't sound like the original and had missing parts and things. So
yeah,
I don't know. I just figured that was worth mentioning.
It's worth mentioning, yeah. And I guess we kind of already talked about Yes albums that need an Atmos mix, but obviously I hope Relayer is done. And I'm sure that people have a different opinion on this, but I hope they continue the box set series, just because if they've done the 4 already and then they do the 5th one, my OCD brain's going to go crazy. Like so if they don't do Relayer as a box set, I'm going to go crazy.
For me, I think part of the reason why I think it's unusual they released these standalone editions before they did Relayer is because now people are going to think twice when the pre-order comes up for Relayer. Yep. So say like in a couple months from now, there's a pre-order for Relayer in one of these, box sets with vinyl like we've got for the other albums. A lot of people are probably going to say, I'll just wait for the standalone, and they'll probably sell less of them.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the best thing they could do is just have the standalone and the box set for sale at the same time, which is honestly what they should have done with all of these to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad they did the standalones later, but it would have been nice to have the option to begin with. And to your point, I mean, when I last interviewed Steven, it came up about whether it's possible to do more of them. I think the two that seem to have been ruled out are Drama and Going for the One. I think they looked into doing them when the original 2010 series was going on. They must be looking into them again now that it's kind of under the Warner umbrella. Maybe it has a better chance of happening. I would like 90125. I know there's kind of a drop off. Like some people who like the 70s records don't really like that one, but I think it would be a great Atmos mix. Whether Steven does it or somebody else will. Nothing has ever been said about tapes being missing for that album, as far as I'm aware.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And after that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we were talking a little bit about the first 2 records before.
Yeah, Time and a Word, I think, would be an interesting choice. For one thing, because the music is very good on it, and John Anderson's singing is very different. He's almost got this bluesy and dreamy quality to his voice that he never really explored after that. It seems like as the records went on, John Anderson's voice became more percussive in quality. Whereas on Time and a Word, he's very warm sounding. And I just think that would be an excellent one to revisit. And it's kind of a shame that they haven't in a while. And it makes me wonder again if maybe just the tapes aren't available for that. But anyway, the point being that if they could create a version where the orchestra was subdued, maybe not there at all, personally, I think they're kind of cool. I don't find them as intrusive as I do on, say, the new Fish Out of Water mix. But, that would be my choice since Drama is probably out. I mean, that Drama would be the one that I would want.
Of the remaining ones, it's the
one.
It's the one I would want the most personally. Though Going for the One, I think would also be great. Yeah. I mean, Awaken is an amazing track.
It is, and simply because Going for the One had such a weird mix to begin with, it's one that kind of it could be like a missing piece situation where it's an album that had like a really strange mix could come out sounding really strong. And it's a pity those tapes aren't available. But in lieu of those, I think Time and a Word would be cool. Like you said, 90125. It's kind of weird to me that 90125 hasn't happened yet. Because it's
or just like Owner of a Lonely Heart is like a streaming only Atmos single. Like I would have guessed that was something they would jump at doing, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe somebody who was in that lineup doesn't want it to happen. I don't know.
Could very well be. Well, it could be somebody who's in the lineup now who wasn't then. Steve Howe.
I mean, have the band ever made any public comments about the surround mixes? Like, has anyone ever said they listen to them or they like them or?
Yeah, I mean, Rick Wakeman, I don't know if he talked about the surround mixes, but I got the sense Rick Wakeman wasn't a fan. But he's like been professionally grumpy for the last 40 years, or longer. I think maybe Jeff Downs has had particular words for the mixes, but again, I don't know if he's speaking directly on the surround mixes. But yeah, anyway, so I think this has been a fun discussion, and I hope that our viewers learned something about these mixes if they were kind of on the fence about picking them up. Personally, I mean, I think you're going to agree with me. I think they're must-haves, especially at this price point. Like, it was harder to recommend them when they were in the box set, but I think that these three mixes and Topographic, which I think will eventually get a standalone release, are among Steven's best Atmos work. And I really think that if you listen to them sequentially, like I have this past week, you can hear how each one gets a little bit better, a little bit more immersive, a little bit more creative. So yeah, I would recommend them wholeheartedly. And for those of you watching, you're gonna have to let us know. Are you excited to check these out? If you already have them and you're looking to the future, what would you like to see next? I mean, obviously, Relayer is a perfectly great response for what would we like to see next. But until then, Jonathan, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been fun as always. And, usually I kind of tease what our next video might be, but I don't know because I thought it was going to be In a Glass House, but that got delayed by 2 weeks. So we might be talking about perhaps upcoming surround mixes because we've had a few announcements, like we've had the Beatles and we've had the Jethro Tull mixes. So we're going to be talking about, I think, upcoming releases in the next video.
And then after that, I think we're not too far away from the .com reissue.
Yeah, that's coming out August 14th. So you can look for that review like in the next month or so. But until then, I've had a lot of fun. And I want to thank you again, Jonathan. And for the folks at home watching, I want to thank you as well. Don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to both of our channels. Jonathan and I are collaborating on this video. So if you go to the subscribe bar and click on it, you will see links to both of our channels. But until then, it's been a lot of fun talking to you, and you'll hear from us really, really soon. All right, take care. Thanks again, Jonathan.
You too.